Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to American Zarathustra. Today, we are going for a walk in some beautiful museums of the world. I hope to do this more frequently. I think this would be a very, very cool thing to do. We're going to first introduce our friends from the White Art Collective who have joined us. Let me just quickly get our music tidied up there, and then I would like to introduce my guests. So we have with us today, maybe change the arrangement on the screen a little bit. I'd like to introduce Jay LaDarc, a fantastic graphic designer, visual artist with the White Art Collective. How are you today, Jay?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on. How are you doing, Donald?
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. It's going to be a lot of fun today. Also with us from, currently residing in the UK, the amazing songstress, Olivia Key. How are you, Olivia?
Hello, hello. I'm great. How are you?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So, and then last but not least, the queen of ghost rock, Hiraeth. How are you doing today, Hiraeth?
Oh, thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you, Donald. Hope you are.
I'm doing good. So I'm going to get back into a little screen sharing and find us a museum. So Jay had suggested a museum. What's the name of the museum again, Jay? I'm sorry.
It's Emery's Carlos Museum.
Okay. And that is whereabouts?
It is at the Emory University in Atlanta.
Oh, okay. In Atlanta. Okay. So when I think of Georgia, I always think of the Art Institute of Savannah. There's got to be some great museums around there as well. But yeah, so here we are. We're just kind of strolling around. If you ladies see something that kind of grabs your eye and you want me to say enlarge it, I'll just kind of peruse. It's just like I said, just in a sense like a virtual walk through a museum here. So this piece here looks like Rembrandt. The thing is that this is it's called an etching, and I used to do etching. It's very interesting. You get a metal plate, and you coat it with a kind of it's a sort of a gummy type surface, and then you draw with like a needle into that surface. Then you put the plate in acid, and then wherever you drew into, the acid will eat into the metal. And then, of course, you wipe off the gummy surface, and then you kind of apply a very, very thin coat of ink to the plate and then press it on paper, and then bang, you can make multiple prints off of that. So this is kind of just a little bit of art background to that type of stuff. What do you think of this piece, ladies? Looks more like a sketch.
It does. I think it looks nice. I like the shading and everything.
He's known for his light, actually. And I would almost say this could even be just like a study too, for say a painting of some kind. But yeah, let's cruise around a little bit more. So, what do you ladies think of modern art, like this kind of Picasso-esque stuff?
Oh,
I hate it.
Hate it. Okay. Yeah, it's. I maybe
personally. I mean, no offense to people who like that sort of thing.
I just thought I'd pop that one out there. Yeah. Now, when it comes to work like this, does this? I mean, it's very. Hold on, let me enlarge it a bit. It's very childlike in its own way.
mhm.
It's kind of sort of sloppy and playful, I guess. What do you think, Olivia? How do you like this one?
I like the concept. I think the execution is, like you said, very, very childish. I mean, there are paintings that are similar to that in what they're trying to convey, but obviously look more sophisticated.
Right, right. I think, and you figure like this is Marc Chagall. This is painted probably over 100 years ago, but you see the use of the light and the color in a lot of graphic design today. That type of approach. So I don't know
Yeah.
how much graphic designers today, really steal from, say, art movements of the past.
Right.
I was going to say it reminds me of cave paintings.
I was
Ah,
gonna say that I want to see it in a cave.
Yeah, it does. It looks like a cave painting. I just think it's
Yeah.
interesting the way that, once it's almost like art peaked in realism. You've got hyper realism now, and art kind of peaked in realism, and from there everyone was like, well, where do we go from here? Well, it was like, well, let's try doing these things that people did before.
yeah.
So you kind of see it's almost like people eventually got bored with realism because it had already peaked. It had already been perfected.
Yeah, it's got a different value to it. This is, really loose, like the painting. It's you can even see the kind of the splashiness of the ink here and such. It has an urgency to it, I guess. Which a child would paint like that too, and so there's a certain kind of energy that comes off of that.
I think there's like an intuitive, like folkish energy to that picture, in my opinion.
That's well said, actually. I would strongly agree with that. This is another lovely piece right here. It's a lot more somber. George Rouault. This is sort of World War I, World War II. No, I'm sorry. Well, he died in 1951. That's his time that he lived. But very heavy, dark lines. Heavy. I don't know. I think that the kind of the transition between World War I and II was really rough for France, so that this sort of like embodies the spirit of the age in its way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also childlike, like the last one, that kind of loose, brushy quality to it. Very high contrast.
Very high contrast. Yeah, you can see the shadow hanging over him, all that grief and guilt.
Yeah. It's not the piece that you can linger on for like a really long time, but it does make a pretty strong statement, I guess, So yeah, this is completely radically different, but I think it's interesting taking a minute to look at stuff like this. I always wish I could read these kinds of manuscripts. They're
I was gonna say, are you gonna translate this for us?
no, I'm not that smart. I just pretend to be smart, but I just find these very lovely. My brother and his wife are in this. It's kind of like a medieval society of creative anachronisms. They do like the jousting and they go to the Renaissance fairs and they do all that stuff. So his wife actually took classes in how to do this, and I'm ashamed to say I forget what it's called exactly, other than calligraphy. There's a special name for it, but there's certain special kind of tools that they use. And I don't know, what's your feeling about this?
I think it's a beautiful manuscript. I think of I don't know if you're like kind of from my generation. I think the first time that I was ever introduced to something like that was in Shrek, like the beginning when they're starting the story, and I'm just like, oh, that's so pretty. And then growing up, you're like, oh wow, yeah, like those are real.
That actually comes from somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more.
What year is it?
Let's take over and back and take a look. That is the 15th century.
15th century. Okay. So this was, it's funny because you're starting to see that they're starting to understand depth again. If you zoom in on the D, they're starting to understand depth and perception again, because this is like right around the earliest of the Renaissance. They haven't applied that concept yet to people, but they are applying it to the D itself. So that's why I had to ask, because I was like, that's like,
Interesting. That brings up a whole other interesting kind of can of worms, is the evolution of art in Western civilization, so like, I'll give you an example here. You see something of a sense of perspective drawing with, kind of the way this perspective drawing meaning that it actually looks real, that it's literally 3D. It doesn't have that flat kind of Gothic look to it per se, but,
right. Well, it's interesting because when you look at Roman art too, at the height of their empire, they fully understood depth and perspective as well. And it's kind of like, we're kind of, I guess we can say we're seeing the same thing in our own civilization. Is like, as the civilization declines, you lose that kind of taste, I guess, and more refined art. You've seen people remark on that with the late empire, how the art had really, become ugly. And but I don't know, at the same time, we have hyper realist painters now, and you can find them all over Instagram, and they're unbelievable.
Yeah, I find that interesting, actually, how people who do painting for, say, video games RPGs, concept art for movies, etc. They really learned how to paint. They went to school. It's not. They put the time and the effort, and it's quite difficult to gain those skills. So I guess that appropriates itself sort of very well to that world, right? That kind of gamer world, fantasy world. Whereas, today we're in the postmodern era and it's all conceptual, at least with these older modern art pieces. Like I believe this is Paul Klee. It's at least somewhat objective, and it's playful. It has a childlike charm to it, even though it's hyper simple. Like, for example, this is just sort of like maybe an etching or a sketch of some kind, but his colors are really just very charming, very lovely.
Right. And another difference between, like, I guess now and then too, is that their problem during the Middle Ages is that kind of knowledge had simply been lost, because their only way of recording these things was, through paper or through oral tradition to teach it. I mean, they didn't even, I'm not sure they really had paper. They had like papyrus, I guess, and other kinds of ways of recording, clay tablets, but but they didn't have like the technology that we do to, they didn't have, the printing press or anything like that. They didn't have the technology that we do to share and maintain knowledge. So it really was quite literally lost how to create depth perception in your paintings and in your drawings.
Wow.
So I like that one.
I was just going to ask you, Hiraeth. For something about this piece makes me think of you just in the moment. I felt like I bet Hiraeth would like this. Why do you like it?
It's well balanced. I like the lighting. I like the strokes or the direction, how everything's going in a specific direction, and it just adds to the depth of the image. I guess it's ink on paper.
Let's take
like a pen or
maybe a lithography. It looks, hold on. Yeah, it's a lithography. Oh. That's a weird method of printmaking where they draw in I guess it's called a grease pen or a grease marker. It's a kind of I try to imagine instead of a pencil, instead of graphite, it's made out of this like kind of black grease. And then they draw on a white stone and then, slap the paper on there and peel it off. And this is what they get. I never did lithography myself, but it allows you to have a beautiful range of tone. As you can see,
it has like an etching quality to it for sure.
Yeah, well said, well said. I think there's something about the lighting that makes it, pretty, I don't know, mysterious or enchanting in its own regard. But
it's really cool. Sorry, it's really cool how they created that warmth without color by using the gradation. So yeah, it's beautiful.
That's actually really, really beautifully said. There's something specific about this artist, Thomas Hart Benton. He's an American artist. This is kind of the time of the Great Depression in America, and that almost comes across a bit too. This is sort of isolationist America. We hadn't been drawn into World War II. It was a different age. And but what's special about his work is the kind of the fluidity of it. Everything has this strange sense of rhythm and like movement. Do you sense that? It's kind of the way that he makes things flow in the way that it's illustrated and sketched, etc. That's probably better examples out there of what I'm talking about, but in a sense, it's somewhere between realism and that childlike nature of like looseness, like there's certain looseness to it.
I like that you wouldn't be able to, achieve this with a picture or, a photo.
Exactly.
I mean, maybe with certain apps these days, but
yeah,
typically without the app or the filters, you couldn't.
All right, go out and make a Thomas Hart Benton app right away. And we'll cash in on that. All right, let's cruise a little bit more here. By the way, I'm having some sipping bourbon, and I believe Hiraeth, what are you having today?
Water. I'm just kidding. I'm having some wine, a little bit of wine.
Oh, okay. That little I just wanted to see if that's sort of from the same era. It's a kind of a simpler America. And these works of black and white, I guess they do feel a little bit somber. Maybe it's part of that is the age, though, like the time period. But I'm just trying to find something a little more exciting or riveting in some sense to look at. Like this piece has a lot of drama in it. What do you think, Jay?
I really like this one. I always like more sea-inspired type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this one's really beautiful. Are they like a rescue boat or?
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, this is very high contrast.
Yeah, indeed. The composition's beautifully done. It has like an asymmetrical balance to it, where it's sort of real heavy on the bottom right, and then you have like these sort of negative spaces almost with the water, like the white of the paper coming through. It seems to me like that could be about the Titanic or something, maybe. I don't know for sure, but also the sense of having a story, having a narrative in there, I think is it gives people something to think about or to kind of to sort of bite into, or give.
There was also some really cool fourth wall breakage there with that one. It looked like a girl who's just like looking right at you.
Let me try to find where we're at here. Did I pass it already, or?
Oh no, it was what we just saw.
That one. I'm sorry. Yeah. So let's see. Now this one here is there's 2 or 3 pieces like this. It looks almost as if it's a nighttime scene. You see how subtle this is. Notice here, like the application, it's almost like it was dabbled on with a soft brush or something. Everything is almost pixelated in a sense. And
I love the name of it. It sounds like a name of a black metal song or something.
Well, the Stone Crusher, yeah.
Yeah, the Stone Crusher.
Oh, dark, man. Anyway, so you can see a figure down here if you look closely. So I like these kind of pieces that make you work a bit, that draw you into that world. It's literally a doorway into another world. And there's just something strangely like dreamlike about it in some way. But maybe
I like how sorry.
No, go ahead. Interrupt away. This show's going to interrupt your show.
The brightest thing in the picture is like that house, or is it a house or a church?
Mm-hmm.
But it just it's kind of symbolic to me of like the importance of home or even spirituality if it is a church. I think it looks like a house, but
yeah, it's fascinating how that is actually like in some way the source of the light of this picture, which is see what you just did there is you created meaning, through looking at what the piece offers you, the information it gives you, and then combining it with who you are, and your perspective on life. So that's, I think, that kind of the magic of art, actually, in some regard, is that we bring something to it. Not all art, obviously. Some art is extremely like explicit in terms of like, this is what this is, but like that's almost more like graphic design per se. There's just tons of fabulous work to look at here. It's hard to kind of choose.
You go to the When Evening Comes.
When Evening Comes.
It's to the right.
To the right, clouds. When Evening Comes. Here we go. Okay. Do you want to comment?
Just look at it.
Oh, okay.
I liked the way the trees looked.
Yeah. I wonder what season this is. It almost looks wintry, I think.
Winter, yeah.
Like a kind of a like winter in Norway or something like that, This reminds me a lot of Van Gogh's trees. He did a lot of these trees that, everything he did was really kind of wrought with his existential angst. Like the trees were him essentially, but there's something to those kind of trees, just like the tortured look that they have. But let's find something else here. Let's see. I think something like this is kind of delightful in a weird way because of the use of light. How the light, it's a dark piece, but I don't know. There's just something about this composition and the movement of the water. I'm fascinated with stuff like that. I think when you're a visual artist, these things, they tend to matter to you. I'm not sure about the birds. They don't seem natural. They kind of seem plugged in. What do you think, Jay?
I actually really like the way that the birds look. I think it gives the piece a bit more character. It kind of separates it from being too realistic and making it a little bit more fantastical.
Interesting. Olivia, what are your thoughts?
I like it. I mean, it looks like the birds are just kind of going in a circle, so it just creates a sort of fluidity.
That
I
actually,
mean,
and
we're
that
kind
actually,
of far out from the sea, but yeah.
that makes more sense too if you think about it. That's kind of what they do, sort of hovering around there. So let's see. I was kind of hoping there might be some more works in color. We'll just scroll down a bit more. So another thing about these is how historic they are, in a sense, the way that they describe our life. I mean, especially pre-photography, but even after photography came into the scene, the sort of visual art always had its place, a very central place in society. Now, this kind of work here is very different in a way. I think it's a little harder on the eyes. Like the use of the contrast is a little bit confusing for me. I don't know. And do any of you like this piece here?
I think it gets the message across because the first thing I think of when I look at it is death, and it's called Bed of Bones. So like, it just all looks very like a skeleton.
So it does kind of match the theme in that sense, which is pretty good. I mean,
is it something I would want on my wall? No, but but it gets the message across.
I mean, you can't really tell where the bones end and the vines and stuff begins. I think we're supposed to look at it and think, okay, well, we all eventually like sink back down into the earth.
Right. That's another way of looking at it. So there's let's see, maybe we'll take a peek at this one here. So this particular piece I like a lot because I really like to see the rendering. Now, when I say rendering, I mean every little line. You see how every little line plays a role in this kind of symphony of this piece and how it all magically comes together.
It makes me think of that book, The Giving Tree.
Classic, yes.
Yeah.
Classic book right there. The other thing too is just how an artist can take something completely mundane and turn it into art. Like this. How do they do that? There's something there. Part of it would be like the use of tone, like these tonal varieties, the dark, medium, light. Notice how the background is a little more dim in some sense. So that creates like an atmospheric perspective. But then down here, the grass has this real loose, scribbly, handmade quality to it. So even though it's very realistic, you get the sense that it's made by the human hand. So I feel like there's a lot of value in that. So why don't we jump over to the Met? Let's go see the Met. I just feel like a little more color would be fun. So I'll try to get some color on the scene here. So I've got a couple pages lined up for the Met. This is just generally their painting page, of which there's different eras and different artists, different mediums, etc. Who do we got here? Gustav Klimt. How do you ladies like this piece here?
I can't see it. It's still the tree.
Oh, you know what? I got to do this. The what do you call it? The screen share thingamajig. Hold on. We'll do that. And we'll
do the thing and the thing.
Yeah, clicking, and, playful banter, a little bit of music, something. So yeah, let me just get my head on straight here. That's not working. How's everything in the UK, Olivia?
It's getting warmer. I mean, we have this like tradition back in California where if it starts cooling off at night, you open all the windows and then you let the house cool down, and then in the morning you keep them open. It starts getting hot, you close all the windows. So I'm having to do that now.
Well, yeah, I think of the UK as, I mean, it's sort of on the same latitude as Canada, I think, right? So I believe it seems to me like it's a lot colder than it seems.
Yeah.
All right, so here we have In Praise of Painting, the Dutch Masters. There's some very nice stuff here. Let me jump over to that page. So here it's just pretty much a collection, their collection of Dutch. masters. And there's something about it that's kind of nice. The Dutch were great painters. They really, it's funny, I think of all the Europeans, that there's something about the Dutch that they might have been ahead of others in some way. As far as realism goes, I would say,
Yeah, it's amazing.
Looks quite Baroque.
Yeah, let's see the time on this one here. 1628. For me, the thing as a painter also is just how they get the textures of things. Like you can tell that's ceramic. You can tell that's glass. You can tell that that's a feather's edge, that this is sort of crumpled paper. The sort of the hard and the soft surfaces, they're just masterful at that kind of thing. Light, of course, is a big thing. I was just kind of thinking like maybe in that time that was the big new technology, to be able to create a painting that was so lifelike. What do you think of this piece, Olivia?
I mean, I think it's beautiful. They had their imaginations worked so much harder than ours have to, because we're constantly staring at screens and we know what glass looks like, and so we have so much happening for us that we don't really have to create something of our own. So I think we've really lost that kind of magic.
That's true. I think that's kind of part of the value of doing something like this, right? Revisiting it.
Yeah.
The other thing is you have to imagine like they had to get their own pigments and grind up their own pigments and make their own paints, and just the time and the effort just to get the equipment to set this up. It's quite stunning. I think it says a great deal about Europe, and our people in this regard, So we'll just kind of cruise around, check out some other pieces. Some of them I think are kind of maybe a little bit dry in terms of, they're just sort of pastoral, just sort of snapshots of daily life and that kind of thing. But so I'm trying to find things that maybe have a little more bang to them. This is nice. How do you like this one, Jay?
I mean, it's a nice landscape. You've got the river and the castle, and but something else that the Dutch did that I think was well ahead of their time, especially compared to aside from maybe some of the Italians, was that they did portray normal people and normal life much more than other artists did. Where other artists were being commissioned by the church or by the very rich to do pieces of pagan gods or of religious scenes and stuff like that. But the Dutch, I guess because they were the first, they were a really big mercantile culture. So you had rich merchants who were paying people to do their families, paint their families and stuff like that. So I think it was, they were more ahead of their time in showing everyday life.
Very well said. I think that's beautifully put as well. There's something just very gentle about this piece that I find relaxing, and I kind of, it's an interesting notion to think like, what was painting for, what were they sort of trying to accomplish, I guess. And in some ways it'd be decorative, other ways it could be historic. Obviously there's religious paintings, and here is one of the greats, Peter de Hooch, which looks a lot like a Vermeer painting. I would say that, they were contemporaries, and the composition is almost identical to like a Vermeer painting in terms of that perspective, the beautiful light. So yeah, it's weird because it's so realistic that in a weird way you tend to not think of it as a painting, and I guess that it's very successful in its magic,
I like how the face in the background is like purposefully blurred out so that you do focus on the other couple, that woman's face. That's really cool.
That's much more in focus than this guy here. So just there you go. I mean, the subtlety of something like that had to be thought out. And that comes back to your point about the imagination and the creativity, the inventiveness of our people back in those times. Notice something here. There's a reflective light on her face that's kind of red. So I'm sort of wondering where that's coming off of, but I feel that's kind of beautiful in its own way. Let's see here. I'm gonna try a different page. We're gonna jump around a little bit. Okay. Sorry for the technical stuff here. There we go. Yeah, I have to like get out of it and then go back into it, which is a weird feature. But let's try this out here. So. Yeah, this is the. Can you see this piece? It's a young lady. See, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Good. So Gustav Klimt, I just got a book of his work for like $4 at a what do you call it? Like a library sale. I thought it was a pretty nice find. So it's quite different from what we've been looking at, in terms of like. But in the same way, it's similar in that it's sort of very decorative. You know what I mean? The color is brilliant, and it's kind of popping off the canvas here. And there's almost something abstract about it too. Like if you look at the pattern on her dress very closely, or even the sort of floral pattern, it's in a sense a precursor to abstract art, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think of this piece, Hiraeth?
I like the overall energy of it. I like the colors. I think it lacks depth though, and the proportions are a little weird. Like the face looks good, but then the body's just kind of a little wonky. It's a little weird.
You're right about that. This like how it kind of comes out here. That's a little awkward.
And then her legs like go down really. Like I feel like it's a girl, and she looks like it just looks strange to me. But I do like the colors and the overall energy. It does seem very like folkish or folky.
Yeah. There was this, I believe, was the time when Japanese woodblock prints were popular in Europe, those just had flat, bright colors on the background. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe Klimt was, imitating that a bit in this particular piece, maybe.
Yeah, this piece kind of to me seems like it's an in-between impressionism and abstract.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm honestly not that big of a fan of Klimt.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell by the way that he does the faces that he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I really like that in between kind of look that he accomplished, where it's like part abstract, part impressionist, and I feel his style is very busy.
Yeah.
It kind of gives me a headache if I try to look at it too long. Honestly, there's too much going on, too much.
Right. But yet we've looked at a lot of pieces already that are quote busy, meaning they have a lot of detail, but they flow, right? There's a harmony to all of that.
Well, the details they're not like sticking out at you as individual entities unto themselves, unlike with this, where a lot of these details stick out at you and you want to look at each one, because they flow together and they're part of a greater whole. While with his, it's it's more abstract. The things, they kind of stick out at you a little bit more. They don't flow quite as well.
To be honest, now that I hear what you're saying, the background almost seems like superfluous. Like, why not just do a portrait of the girl from, like, say, the waist up or something? Like, you know what I mean? Like that makes more sense to me, in the sense that, like, it's almost more a painting about all this other business.
It almost looks unfinished.
That's another aspect of it. Yeah, there's that.
I think it's weird because like there's something very childish about the colors and the way that she's dressed, but her expression is so mature. It just doesn't vibe, I don't think.
Interesting. So that's where interpretation starts to take place, where you start to, gather information about what you think or feel about the painting, and make some sort of judgments almost about who's in the painting and what the narrative is. What does it feel like to you? Now, talk about a busy piece. This one is insane. I'm like doing a close up here. I mean, I could get even more so, and the amazing sense of balance of like all the details of the background is extraordinary. That somehow this makes sense. It's visually, it's not, I don't want to say messy. I want to say like the last piece looked kind of like sloppy, almost like it kind of like just putting it together in an impressionist kind of way. Whereas here it's realism. If you're to look in the woods, it's just a bunch of trees and leaves and stuff. How do you paint that? That's kind of maddening. But so I just, it's like, it's a colossal task to accomplish a painting like this. But all that aside, can you see these angels on the side here? It's sort of a angelic figure in like a golden. You can see his head right here. He's got golden arm.
Yeah, I see that.
And then next to him is this angel. She has a little halo, and there's like a cherub down here.
See, I was more focused on the woman because she looks so lost and broken. She's like,
right,
she's like, look at her face. She's like, I'm in hell right now. And like, maybe it's because she's turned away from the angels,
She has a sort of like an Ophelia quality to her, where she's lost in some kind of grief or something. You got to wonder, what is she reaching out to? What is she, I can read a little bit on the side here. Joan of Arc. Okay, painted in 1879. Jean-Bastien Lepage. Joan of Arc, the medieval teenage martyr from the French province of Lorraine, gained new status as a patriotic symbol when France ceded part of the territory to the German Empire after the Franco-Prussian War. Bastien Lepage, a native of Lorraine, depicts the moment when Saints Michael, Margaret, and Catherine appear to the peasant girl in her parents' garden, rousing her to fight the English invaders in the 100 Years' War. Critics of the Salon of 1880 praised Lepage's use of pose and facial expression to convey Joan's spiritual awakening, but found the inclusion of the saints odd with this naturalistic style. So it always kind of helps a bit to get, a little bit of a background to it. That adds a tremendous amount of meaning to it, right? And how does that, Olivia, for you, how does that information affect your relationship to the painting?
I mean, it does affect it a bit. I agree with what Hiraeth was saying about how she just seems to be, in her own world. And if this is Joan of Arc, then, that kind of makes sense. Maybe there was that point in her life where she wasn't fully committed to, what she ultimately ended up doing.
It's funny because I don't know anybody who wants to be in war. It's sort of thrust upon you,
Right.
There's some phrase about that, about history choosing you, or you have to kind of rise to the occasion, etc. This is a piece I want to share with you. I really love this piece, the Shepherd's Song. There's just something about this style that I find very sublime. Jay, do you want to respond a little bit to this? Have you seen this piece before?
I actually haven't seen this piece before, but I do really like this style as well. Because, well, what year is this? Is this?
Let's take a look. 1891.
1891. Okay, so that's interesting because you kind of see this resurgence of this in-between style, which was in between, I guess, Byzantine and Renaissance, which El Greco did. This is very reminiscent of El Greco, which is why when he was rediscovered around this time, actually, they thought that it was a modern artist. And it's because you can see that it's classical, but it kind of has perspective, but it kind of doesn't. It's still a little bit flatter, So, I mean, I really do like this style. I think it's a really good mixture between classical as well as a little bit more modern. I like the use of color. The colors are a little bit, they're not super, super high contrast, but they all work so lovely together.
Yeah. Hiraeth, what's your impression?
I want to know what that guy is thinking about in the far back corner in the left. He's just hanging out by himself. So
that guy. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's thinking, when's Hiraeth's next album coming out? Yeah, it's a lovely piece. It's just so well balanced, That's the thing of it. That I think when we see something, a man-made creation of this kind that has the kind of balance, and then also there's something classical about it. I don't know what it just sort of grabs my spirit.
It's the facial features. The facial features are very Greco-Roman.
Right. I would also say perhaps the clothing that they're wearing as well.
I loved how the space above his head was just clouds and sky, and that's just the only part in the painting, just right above his head while he's in thought. Yeah, I think there's something cool there.
Actually, you brought up a very, very smart point, because that doesn't happen by accident, right? This is composed, and so the artist kind of made these sloping mountains in a way they point right to him, you know. And if you look at even his arm, it parallels the slope of the mountain behind him, as does this cloth, as does her shawl on her head. So there's a lot more at work here. And then you have these elements, these three elements, the pots and the plants here as well. So this is what I mean about balance. You know, there's three of them, three of these. This kind of throws the balance off a little bit, but I would say intentionally, because you almost kind of have to have, you don't want it to be mechanical in a sense. But what you pointed out, Olivia, was brilliant. How the emptiness of the air here, it punctuates him beautifully.
That guy in the far left, he's like neglecting his dog or whatever animal that is, because he's or maybe it's I don't know, it's a goat. Because he's like looking at the other guy thinking, he's like, what is that guy thinking about? So he's like sitting there.
Like, how come
the animals are like, I'm hungry, feed me.
How come that guy's got time to think when I have to take care of these sheep? That's what it is.
Yeah.
The class struggle is what. No. So yeah, we'll cruise around a little bit more. This is just something fun. This piece is obviously not finished, but I don't know. I do like the color. Toulouse-Lautrec is kind of known in the Impressionist period. But his work was the kind of the nightlife of Paris. He actually did a lot of great posters for kind of the sort of like body entertainment of the nightlife of Paris. And I think this, I don't know, for me, the light works really nice. His view on people was almost like a caricature in some regard. I don't know, how does this piece strike you, Olivia?
To me, I mean, it's very fun. The way seeing the strokes come down kind of makes me think of like a curtain or sequence or something like that. It almost makes me feel like I'm kind of peering into maybe a scene that I maybe shouldn't be looking at, but it looks very warm.
I'd say that's also the composition too. Like it almost looks like a snapshot, and I don't know if those what the relationship of the characters are here. But Jay, what's your impression?
I love the brush strokes. I really love the use of color. Again, this is kind of when Impressionism was starting to, it looks like it was starting to move into abstract almost.
Mm-hmm. I guess maybe, no, you're right about that, but I'm wondering if that's just simply because this piece wasn't completed. But I actually like that. I like seeing the process of a painting and how it evolves. You know, a painting is like, say, half finished. I find that very interesting. So let's look around a little bit more here. I've always been in love with the ballet paintings by Edgar Degas. Degas is one of my personal favorites. I've seen this in the Met, and it's ridiculous. It's a really small painting. It's I don't know, maybe what did I do? It's a small painting of, I'd say, I don't know, like 12 inches by 10 inches or something like that. And so that's mind-blowing to think, like, how is he capable of doing such a sophisticated piece on such a small scale? And I think as just, you know, museum goers, you look at this and it's a snapshot of a day in the life, but in reality, it's a human hand and a human mind that put these things together. And in some regard, it shows the evolution of our culture. You know, here we have a dance school for these women. You've got, of course, the instruments, the music that goes with ballet. That's its own world. I love this beautiful use of the mirror here, and you can even see the cityscape in the background. This old gentleman, you know, looking at her, he must be a choreographer or own the school or something. He's probably, you know, criticizing like her movements and fine-tuning it, whatever. But how do you like this piece, Hiraeth?
I love this piece. I can't believe it's that small, to be honest. But it also makes me think, well, first, he must have had really tiny brushes.
Yeah.
And like a variety, a big range of pigments, like you were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. And then it also makes me think about the memory that these artists have of just being able to capture something like this, because obviously with something like a still life or even a painting of a person where the models would have to sit for hours, you can't do that when people are dancing. I mean, it's just not possible. So this is all based on his memory, and that just blows my mind because, you know, I don't have that kind of memory. And I think that like social media actually affects our memories when it comes to not being able to retain images and stuff for long periods of time because things are moving so quickly, you know?
Yeah.
This is just my theory anyways, but
these are brilliant concepts. I like your insights. Yeah.
But yeah, I just can't believe that you know, these kind of artists could remember something like that and paint it so well proportioned, considering, you know.
And then think about the light and the color as well.
Oh yeah, all of that. It's crazy.
Textures, etc. Like I don't know what the material is on the dress, chiffon or something like that, maybe, or the silk bows and these things. It's just marvelous. I always worry a little bit, like, you know, we live in a society where like a jump cut culture, you know, where everything is on screen for like, you know, 3 seconds and then the next and the next and the next. Whereas going back to the museums and going back into our history, our culture, this wonderful continuity that we have as a people, it calls on us to slow down and really calm down and observe and enjoy. And this is beautiful. I mean, you would do that in a park. You'd do that on a boat. You know, you would do that with your you know, people that you care about and you're paying close attention. So in a sense, that's what's happening here is you're kind of taking a little time off to relax and look at what's going on in our culture. So let's see if we've got some other stuff to look at here. Try our next page. And if there's something that jumps out at you that you want me to focus on, just, you know, tell me to stop and go over to that piece. You know, this I find interesting. Oedipus and the Sphinx. I love mythological painting. You know, to me, this is just me, but it's more art than art in a sense. In that, like the piece that we just looked at is exquisite. It's incredible. But I guess it's reality, right? Whereas mythology is like a kind of super reality. It's this other mythic reality. I'm just excited about it because you can't, you know, sort of see it, right? So only artists, I think, are in a way there to open up a window to that world.
I agree, Donald. I love mythology, and I think it adds several layers to meaning of something when it's painted like that. So
indeed. I'm going to read this thing on the side here. The legendary Greek prince Oedipus confronts the malevolent Sphinx, who torments travelers with a riddle. What creature walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the noon, and 3 legs at evening? Remains of victims who answered incorrect litter the foreground. The solution is the human, who crawls as a baby, strides upright in maturity, and uses a cane in old age. How marvelous. What a wonderful little story that is, you know. It's very enriching. Moreau, the painter, is Gustave Moreau, who did lots of great work in this vein. Moreau made his mark with this painting at the Paris Salon of 1864. Despite the growing prominence of depictions of everyday life, which we were just talking about, he portrays stories from the Bible, mythology, and his imagination. His otherworldly imagery inspired many younger artists and writers, including Odilon Redon and Oscar Wilde. So let's just kind of zoom in on this a bit and check it out. Here at the bottom, you see the remains of this guy looks like he's still concentrating on the question somehow, but, you know, others that have died. I am kind of curious if there's some esoteric symbolism here, like the snake. What is this 3-headed chalice? What, you know, I've always found this particular creature to be just bizarre, you know, like it kind of just very creepy in its own kind of way. And the confrontational body language here, it really, I think once of course, you know the story, you see that this guy is, you know, he could die in a second. She could tear his guts out in a second or whatever, you know. But Jay, what's your impression of this piece?
What I find interesting is the way that the Sphinx is portrayed as like a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
For one, you know.
They almost look like they're in love. Actually.
There's something actually like quite seductive, almost romantic about what's happening in this piece.
I wasn't going to say it, but now that you did, it's okay. We can all admit it now. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
yeah, it's bizarre. There's something slightly sexual almost about it. So that's quite a powerful piece there. All right, let's look at some other stuff. Okay. Like I said, if anything grabs your attention, just shout out here. Here's our man. This is Caspar David Friedrich. You guys, everybody in the movement would know him for that famous meme that's been mashed up a million times of a Germanic man standing on a mountaintop looking off into a sunset. Maybe they have that in here. I sure hope they do. He's one of my favorite painters of this time. For some reason, he always uses this composition where people are facing away. They're just sort of different variables of this same kind of feeling. And there's just something about the Germanic spirit that I feel like there's just something beautiful about it. Again, the composition, like this is extremely well framed. You have this kind of, I don't know if this is this would have to be some kind of a late stage of the moon here, maybe. This kind of triangular pattern here that's contemplative, I feel. What are your thoughts, Olivia?
Well, you have the late stage of the moon, you have the late stage of the tree, roots are coming out, you know. I think that there's a lot, nature is contemplating death at this point, as well as those two men.
Yeah, with that it being at dusk as well, that could. So there you go. Like your interpretations are really beautifully thought out. I like you just.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're like on it instinctively right away. You know, I mean, I'm giving all this technical talk, and you're like, this is what it means. So it's like that's very beautiful. That's in a sense what you want. That's what you're kind of going for, or what people should sort of strive for is developing some kind of a relationship with the art.
Yeah.
So here's a classic right here, The Death of Socrates. That's a major classic. It's quite something. I mean, I'm zooming way in on it here, and the like the softness of everything. You know, the way the colors are blended. You can't see a brush stroke in here. It's really something. There's something amazing about the composition. It's almost mathematical. Look at the relationship of these figures and these kind of like the angles that you're seeing throughout the piece. How it flows, it leads the eye. These people are all grieving because he has to commit suicide. He's gone against the state, and he's in a sense here pointing to a higher truth. And then this, you see the kind of the pain and anguish of him. They know he's going to die, and maybe he can give us one last lesson before he goes. So it's just it's like theater on canvas. Would you agree? Anybody?
Oh. Yes, I would agree. I think that there's like a weird, it's interesting how the cup and his hand is like the center focal point.
Yeah, it's something.
There's like because there's that little space, and for some reason it adds this tension to the whole thing.
Huge.
Where like the people to the left are looking away, and then there's like the people to the right that are looking towards him, and he's looking towards the people to the right, and it's just this weird thing. But it's really interesting.
It captures a moment very profoundly.
Is that a musical instrument on the bed behind him? I can't tell.
I was trying to figure that out. Let me zoom in a bit. Yeah, that is I believe it's like
a lyre.
A lyre. It's like a kind of a harp. It's associated with Apollo. There's also these chains here. I don't know if you notice, like, see the shackles and the chains that you can see. I'll have to, maybe I'll read a little bit about the event that this is about. In this landmark of neoclassical painting from the years immediately preceding the French Revolution, David, that's his Jacques Louis David, one of the greatest painters of French history. So just dropping that in there. So David took up a classical story of resisting unjust authority in a sparse frieze-like composition. The Greek philosopher Socrates, born 469, died 399 BC, was convicted of impiety by the Athenian courts. Rather than renounce his beliefs, he died willingly, discoursing on the immortality of the soul before drinking poisonous hemlock. That's powerful. That's really powerful stuff. So in David's time, this was kind of a political piece. This is a political piece, sort of saying like, here's this moment in history where this great thinker had to, he had to kill himself because the courts, had decided that he had broken some law. So even though this is extremely removed in history and context, it actually could play a role for us in our time. Do you think am I stretching this too much, Jay? What are your thoughts?
No, I don't think so at all. When was this? Was this French Revolution?
Yes, this is
French Revolution. Yeah, no. So I mean, the concept itself can go through any time of tumult or of revolutionary thinking. These just men who are willing to die for what they believe in, who won't back down, no matter what the state says.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts, Hiraeth? She's getting a glass of wine, I guess. Are you there, Hiraeth? She might be on mute. The evil mute button. How about Olivia? She's on mute.
I really like this piece. I think he's already halfway there because he has 1 foot that's not even on the ground. Mm-hmm. So I think at this scene, I think he's already made up his mind at that point. And it's actually very interesting because where I live now in the UK, and especially in the springtime, there's a lot of hemlock, like everywhere. Wow. And I've been really getting into like foraging and stuff, so I can tell like if something is, don't touch it, don't eat it. Wow. It's been really cool for me. And so like I was on a long walk with my boyfriend the other day, and I got so excited when I saw hemlock because I got to tell him the story of like Socrates and everything. And yeah, it was really cool.
Pretty wild. That's amazing how that ties together. For me, this seems like it was painted much longer ago, but I find it interesting how, even in the 17th century, they were still painting, these scenes of the past, and they were connected to their past. That was lively and a part of who they were. The context wasn't that much different in the sense that people knew these stories, they knew their history, and then the artists were able to use it in a way that functions politically and socially. That's quite fantastic. There's some really nice pieces here. Let me go.
Can we do? Yeah, I was going to ask that one.
Yeah, I'm always enamored with these kinds of pieces. Let's look at this first. Giovanni Battista Tiepolo. I have a book of his work. I saw an exhibit of his work in New York years ago, and I had to buy like the book. So now, for starters, this is meant to be on a ceiling. So it's a ceiling painting, which gives you that impression that you're looking up through the ceiling into heaven, and, since it's on the ceiling, you can see it from different angles, right? You see how on the right, for example, that would be like the picture plane is, I think you understand what I mean. Like they're all kind of like here they look as if they're upside down, but you would just turn around, marvelous sense of space and layering with these clouds. The subtlety of the color and the light is just exquisite. But let's zoom in a little bit and see how much we can zoom in on things here. So like each one of these things is a painting in and of itself. Oh crap, sorry. If I touch it too much, it gets it does that. But isn't that lovely? Look at that. To me, I think of that almost like music in a way. What's your impression of this piece, Hiraeth? Let's see if Hiraeth.
It makes me think of well, like lots of things, like ancient cosmology, the zodiac, yeah, just how they used to personify the planets and stuff as gods and people, and I think that's really interesting, how it's portrayed in this painting, for sure.
And Donald, I just have to say, how you mentioned music, it looks like this is all centered around, you have Apollo, god of music, like, you know, damn near in the center of the painting. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very well said. That makes, and notice how he's the only one who's kind of facing us. I'm losing control of my yeah, sorry, let me get out and go back in. That ought to do it. So give me a second here. That's a brilliant point right there. Let me read a little bit about this here. This canvas, which is among Tiepolo's largest and most dazzling oil sketches, represents Apollo about to embark on his daily course across the sky. Deities around the sun god symbolize the planets, and allegorical figures on the cornice represent the 4 continents. On April 20, 1752, Tiepolo presented this preliminary sketch to Carl Philipp von Griffenklau, Prince Bishop of Würzburg, as his proposal for the decoration of the staircase ceiling of the residence, often considered the artist's greatest achievement and a landmark of European painting. Wow, wonderful. And my dog is trampling down the stairs here. Hey, buddy. So yeah, that's a nice piece. There's a lot to, and considering this is a sketch too, like this isn't the final. This would be like a, you know, if I want to sell a piece or say, you know, get a commission, you'd kind of rough up a sketch. So for him to think of this as a sketch is really quite extraordinary.
I wish that could be my sketch. I want a sketch like that.
Yeah, I'll just whip that up for you. There you go. Now this piece caught my eye. I like these kind of almost scary, sort of mystical looking pieces here. What's your impression of this one, Olivia?
Well, it is quite dark. The colors and everything, I don't know if it's because I'm a 90s kid, but like a lot of the textures of these paintings we've been looking at look like older 90s games, like PC games. Like this makes me think of Monkey Island. Because of the I don't know if anybody remembers that one, but just like I do love the colors. I love the moon. You can't fully see it. I like how there's this symmetry here going on in the bottom left and the top right between the light of the moon and the light of the cave.
Beautifully said. Yeah, yeah. So it just says so much about composition and how it plays a role. So you have a sort of balance here with this light interacting with that light, and then this hill in the foreground against that hill in the background. So it has a fascinating sense of balance. I think your eye immediately goes to the light, and then you sort of walk down the path into the cave, where if I can zoom in a bit more, there seems to be some dude reading a book. I don't know.
my eye goes to the cave because I'm thinking like, gosh, like, can you imagine the acoustics in that place? Like the way it's shaped. So I'm like, that'd be the best place to play some music.
Get your guitar.
Right.
See, if I one of these days when I go to Europe, I want to visit these kinds of ruins, like, you know, old, presuming this is like a Roman ruin in somewhere in Europe. That would be nice. Just a quick reading here. The painter depicts a site that had long been a popular destination for visitors to Naples. Indeed, he could reasonably expect that Londoners who viewed this painting at the Royal Academy in 1779 would recognize the tomb of Virgil, author of the, I can't pronounce this, Aeneid, I think. Perhaps more obscure is the figure Silius Italicus, the Roman orator, who commemorated the anniversary of the great poet's death each year by reading his verses aloud within the tomb. Hiraeth, you were right about acoustics. As a meditation on mortality, right fittingly contrasts the flickering glow of the lantern and the silvery moonlit spreading over the landscape. So it's poetry on canvas, you know, if you think about it. And I think this is like a kind of a synesthesia of the arts, where, you know, it's nice to think of, like, when we looked at the piece of Apollo, immediately I felt music in that piece. You know, there's sort of a big orchestra where you have like layers of sound and layers of instruments kind of, you know, flowing over each other.
Love Apollo.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah,
Love him so much.
that's marvelous. It's very marvelous. A lot of work here. There's a beautiful Vermeer. Oh, here's my guy right here. I have to share this with you. George Latour, gorgeous George. There's a kind of a whole series of paintings that he did, using this kind of device where he has kind of a central lighting in a very dark room, and almost always has the skull. So like the candle, the skull, and, you know, this woman. It's very contemplative if you allow yourself to go into the work and like really surrender to it. There's a beautiful sound coming from it. There's something, I don't know how to express this. It's very quiet. I'm saying like the sound of silence or something, but there's something that resonates, I suppose, with me anyway. Jay, what is your impression of this piece?
Well, first, I absolutely love it. I love everything about this. I love the composition. I love the contrast. I love the way that your eye immediately goes through the candle and its reflection. The woman and the skull are almost like a backdrop. Like they're not the main parts of this painting. They're not like the subject, you know, the subject, but they're not the subject. His use of texture is interesting. It's different, especially for the time. Right. It does have a very modern feeling to it, especially the texture of her skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. I love it.
It's almost porcelain, you know, the way her skin is almost porcelain.
Like she's made of ceramic, yeah.
Yeah. The highlights of the candle on the gold, look at these pearls, a pearl necklace. How delicate is that? It's just so marvelous and so lovely. So it's really quite a stunning piece of work. I feel obviously that it has a sort of like the contemplation of life and death. Perhaps the candle in the mirror could be sort of symbolic of, you know, our bodies and our spirits, maybe.
Yeah, it's a very existential piece, that's for sure.
Hiraeth, what do you think about this piece?
I agree. I think that it's it looks very symbolic to me. Like the light is the only source of light is of a candle. And to me, that represents probably something along the lines of, you know, a soul or spirit, whatever, like eternal fire that you have within you. Yeah. And so it's sort of representative of that to me, that eternal life part of humanity.
Olivia, do you want to share any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm curious as to what she's looking at, because it looks like she's looking above the mirror and we're supposed to be the ones looking into it. Yeah,
that's actually a brilliant point. You always seem to notice things that nobody notices, which is good. I mean, one can only interpret that, I suppose. Like, in a sense, she's actually looking into the darkness, right?
Yeah.
Step into the abyss.
So, yeah, this is just a lovely piece. And he has many more pieces like this that are all like stunning, you know, really stunning. So let's just kind of look at maybe a few more here. Oh, let's see. This is an El Greco, but it's not what he's really known for. Maybe I can find a piece that's closer to his, what he's... So El Greco is a really bold Spanish painter. He uses like really high contrast, and his figures are, I don't know, kind of viney and tree-like in a way that they don't like follow exact anatomy. I can't seem to find a really good example, unfortunately, but just was trying to tie that into what we were talking about a bit earlier. So this is an interesting point here. It seems like in this time, my history, our history is a bit fuzzy, but they were making depictions of Christ that were a lot more human. humane and kind of tortured, that showed a lot more of the human suffering of Christ in these depictions at the time. And I think that's a significant change in like European history and obviously Christian art. So I think it's something worth noting. It's not, say, beautiful. We've been looking at a lot of works of beauty. It's more, I think, it's perhaps to kind of draw in our sense of compassion and maybe humanity. I mean, there's other people that could comment on this much better than I am, but it's worth just taking at least a moment to, acknowledge that and take a second to look at that.
Sacrifice too, just the fact that they're both staring at him and they're like in awe, kind of.
And was that Mary on the left?
Yes. Yeah.
It's interesting. She's almost as pale as he is, like, so I mean, when he died, a piece of her died as well, and she's wearing purple, which is a color of royalty and hierarchy, and then you have these other colors like red on the other side, which is very like, very human, very raw.
I noticed her skin tone was almost the same, as if like she was dead too, which is
Yeah.
because those things, they obviously convey important thoughts and ideas and meaning. So that's a good thing that you pointed that out. So this here is the Coronation of the Virgin by Annabelle Carracci in 1595. The majestic picture, a window into heaven, was painted for Cardinal Pietro. I'm not great at these big Italian names. Aldobrandini, in etc. Following the artist's arrival in Rome in 1595. In it, Annabelle brings together two currents of Italian painting: a northern Italian sensitivity to the effects of natural light and color, and the spatial organization and idealized figures associated with Raphael. The figure of God the Father was based on an ancient Roman sculpture of Jupiter. Together with Caravaggio, Annabelle Carracci was the most influential painter of the 17th century and the main figure in the development of classicism. So that's interesting to know, to note like the kind of historic roles that they had. But to me, this is fascinating in the same way that mythological paintings are fascinating. It shows you a world beyond the physical world, the spirit world, the world of the gods, a world beyond the human eye, and I'm just always enchanted by that. Hiraeth, what's your impression of this piece?
Well, naturally, I love that everyone's playing music. Everyone has an instrument around, and then you have like the center piece, and everything's like, it's like the angels are singing, and then everybody's playing their instruments in this grand symphony of sorts. So
yeah, that's interesting because you can see behind them this giant gallery of I guess angels, and then this sort of the cherubs down here. Beautiful. How about Olivia? What's your feeling on this one?
Well, I love that they, of course, naturally incorporated some kind of paganism into this. You have Jupiter, and I think it's beautiful. It makes a lot of sense to me. And then, above you have the cloud of witnesses, as I think is what they would call them. And yeah, there's a lot of balance, and I mean, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Jay, what are your thoughts on this one? Jay LaDarc, who's in the dark.
Oh, she said, "Be right back."
Oh, okay. Okay, I didn't see that. All right. Well, we'll move on then.
It's kind of Venetian. Like, she reminds me of Venus, and then there's like, she's got the two hands out, so it's like the scales of Libra. If you think about it, if we're gonna go astro nerd. But yeah.
No, that's see that once you take that vein, so to speak, that of interpretation, you can see that. I find that, where does it all come from? Is it pagan? Is it Christian? Or is it, in some sense, like European biospirit? I think that sort of these figures have kind of crossed over in the arts. they obviously have different iconography. You can tell, Christ has, the stab on his side, and just like the long hair and the beard, the younger man. So you know who that is per se, right? But whereas God the Father really could be Zeus, as far as I can tell. I don't know,
Exactly. Yeah, that's how I saw it.
So it's just fascinating to me in some sense that somehow that the kind of the pagan art sensibility translated over into this, that it brings, I guess, another layer of depth or meaning to it. So let's see if there's another one here. I want to thank everybody in the audience for joining. I'm not really able to read the comments or anything, but I'm so glad that you joined us today. So let's see. Well,
it's been a very nice walk through the museum, Donald.
Yeah, I was going to close it up there. I wanted to ask if maybe the three of you could just let people know where they can find you. I'm going to have your links in the show notes below. So, and I'll probably do this again if somebody is interested in joining me for a day at the museum. Then please contact me on AmericanZarathustra.com. I'm on Twitter. American Zarathustra at Proton Mail is good. I would love to hear your comments. Would you like to see more of this kind of content? I hope that it's been enriching for everybody, that it's allowed people to kind of get a little touch with our past and the arts through the arts, and that in some way that broadens your scope of who you are. We always say, become who you are. Well, how? Well, the arts. The arts are one of the best ways to do that. And so it's been an amazing pleasure to be with these three incredible ladies who are very intelligent and outspoken. Their arts are extraordinary. Their arts alone speak so much. And in order to be great artists, you have to be able to read great art or interpret art in a way that shows sensitivity and intelligence. So it's been an absolute pleasure to be with the three of you. So yeah, I just want to ask Olivia if you could let people know where they can find you.
Well, thank you so much, Donald, for having me and having us on. Those were really, really sweet words. I really appreciate that. I really enjoyed my time here. It was great to look at art with all of you, and I hope that we can do it again. I really enjoyed it. All of my links are, you can find just my name, Olivia Key. A lot of my my handles are Key of O. I have YouTube where I post music. I'm coming out with an album this summer called Cloud 14. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Gab, I'm on Telegram, Odyssey, and BitChute. So yeah, check me out.
Beautiful, excellent. And again, the link will be below. Hiraeth, would you please honor us here? Tell us where we can find you, and if you have any updates or news.
I second what she said. It's been really nice doing this, and I enjoyed it. It's been very comfy and cozy. And you can find me I have a link tree under Hiraeth Music, which has all of my links. So I would just search that. Otherwise, it's like Hiraeth Music or Hiraeth Music 9 on like every platform. So
nice, very, very good. And then also Jay LaDarc, thank you so much for your insights. Being a visual artist, having knowledge of art history really, really enriched the show a lot. So you contributed so much. I thank you. Could you please let people know where they can find you?
Oh, well, thank you so much, Donald. You always flatter me every time I talk to you. But you can find my visual arts on Instagram. I have that linked. It's Artemisian Aesthetic. I'm also on Twitter, and another friend of mine, Grace, and I are actually working on our own podcast. We have one coming out hopefully early next week where we discuss cults and the occult. So if you want to listen to us, we're going to be talking about that. So yeah.
I'm totally tuning into that. That'll be a fascinating topic. And so once again, thanks to the audience. God bless you guys. Remember, whiteartcollective.com. We have a very, very major announcement coming next week. This is a big one, so stay tuned to what's going on. Of course, you can find me at American Zarathustra. Please subscribe and share and leave a comment, and have a blessed day. Bye-bye.